What does Genesis 2 and 3 have in common with the Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and Harry Potter? Here's a hint. It has nothing to do with Voldemort, Snoke, or Gollum. Although they look like they could be distant cousins. Hey, welcome to episode 4 of Riverside. My name is Luke. I'm a youth minister in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm also an avid fly fisherman. And so essentially what happened is those two things merged and then had a baby, and thus Riverside was born. If you're watching this, you're like one of a few people who actually watched it. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, comment, share it with your friends. I'm trying to grow this page into something like a community of people who love nature, love the outdoors, love fishing, but also love Jesus. It's a really cool community, and I think it'd be even cooler if we could center it around Christ. So that's what I'm trying to do. Today, what we're going to be doing is looking at Genesis 1, 2, and 3, and also looking at a few other stories. There's a common thread between Genesis 2 and 3 and a lot of other stories, and so we're going to look at that, pull out some applications, and kind of just examine it and look at it, and just see what's there. We're just going to look at this. Would you just look at it? So that's what we're going to do. Also, I apologize. My allergies have been acting up, and I've been coughing my head off lately. So if I cough a lot, or if you hear the audio go mute, what that is I'm trying to silence the coughing so that you don't get your ears blown out. So I apologize in advance, but I'll do my best to kind of quell my coughing or my allergies and kind of do the best I can. But let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, we're going to look at some stories, basically Harry Potter, Star Wars, and Lord of the Rings, and find a common thread between them all, and then see if that common thread is in Genesis, which, hint, it is. And so we're going to look at them. To start, all three of those fictional stories, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, they all have a main character who is a young boy. Luke Skywalker, Frodo, and Harry, right? They all also have some type of older mentor to look up to. Harry Potter has Dumbledore. Frodo has Gandalf. Luke Skywalker has Obi-Wan Kenobi. So they all have like an older mentor to look up to. They all have best friends. Harry Potter has Ron and Hermione. Frodo Baggins has Samwise Gamgee. Luke Skywalker has, Han Solo, Leia, Chewie, the whole gang. And then they all start in similar ways. If you notice all three of those stories are structured in really similar ways. And to start, they all start in places that essentially represent perfection. Okay? And what I mean by that is this. Frodo Baggins starts, like Lord of the Rings, it starts in the Shire. And if you haven't seen the Lord of the Rings, the Shire is like the perfect place. Think of like the perfect weather day, and it's a place where everybody gets along more or less. You have everything you need. It's a tight-knit community. You have a cozy home, and it's just like this. It's like the epitome of coziness. I would love to live in the Shire. So that's kind of where Lord of the Rings starts. Star Wars starts in a place that it's not necessarily perfect because Luke Skywalker has a lot of complaints about it, but at the same time, it still offers him some type of peace and comfort. And the reason I know this is because whenever he's given the opportunity to go and fight for the rebellion or to fight the Empire, what does he do? He makes up excuses. No, well, I have to help my uncle on the farm, and I can't because I got this going on and all this stuff. And so you could make the argument that although it's not perfect, it's some type of comforting place for Luke Skywalker. Then you have Harry Potter. And listen, I'm a Harry Potter nerd. I love Harry Potter, and Harry Potter starts off in the coziest of fictional worlds. All right, starts off at Hogwarts. And I know some of you are probably like, wait a second, it starts off at number 4 Privet Drive with his aunt and uncle, and yes, but ultimately it starts off at Hogwarts. And Hogwarts represents perfection. And, what better way to show perfection than to contrast it with an awful place? So you have this awful place where he's neglected and mistreated and abused at number 4 Privet Drive with his aunt and uncle. Then after that, he goes to Hogwarts and he has a home and he has friends and he's even given Christmas present and he has food on the table. It's not even just food, like food in abundance, like an extreme amount of food. He has everything he needs, people who take care of him. And so it starts off at Hogwarts. But all these three different places are representative of perfection. And I think that's a really important thing to note. And then, in all three of these stories, something comes in and threatens that perfection. Whether it's Voldemort, or the orcs and Sauron or Saruman, or it's the Empire, something comes in and threatens this perfection or this wonderful place in a drastic way. I mean, what's more drastic than Luke Skywalker coming back to his farm to realize that the Empire has killed and burned his family? You know, what's more drastic than Voldemort coming in and basically using Professor Quirrell to try to take over the school? Like, what's more? And so in all three of these stories, you have something that tries to come in and threaten this way of life that they know and love and are comfortable with. And it's at that point where their perfect place is threatened that all three of those characters finally realize what their purpose is. They all realize what their purpose is, but it's not even just an understanding of their purpose, but they feel that they have no other choice but to go and fight for what they have left in the world, or for what they love in the world. And so those places are a part of their being. It's where they belong. And to have that ripped away is unacceptable, and so they fight, and so they understand their purpose. And it's the same thing for Genesis 1, 2, and 3. Adam and Eve both had a mentor to look up to, and it's kind of a silly way to refer to silly thing to call God, right? It's like not something we kind of think of him as a mentor. But God certainly did teach them. He certainly did have a relationship with them. He certainly did talk to them. As a matter of fact, Genesis 1, 28 through 31 says that God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves in the ground." Then God said, I'll give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food, and to all the beasts of the earth and all the birds in the sky and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. And so, while it's strange to call God a mentor, he certainly did act in a way that kind of acted as a mentor does. He taught them things. He guided them, gave guidance on things. And so, for all intents and purposes, Adam and Eve both had a mentor to look up to, and that was God. Not only that, but they also had a best friend in each other. Genesis 2:18 says that, Then the Lord God said, "It is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper corresponding to him." And then God sent him animals. God sent him animals before he sent Eve. Why? Why would God do that? Here's what I think. I believe that God sent animals to Adam before Eve because Adam needed to realize that nothing on earth would be a suitable helper for him. Nothing on earth is a suitable helper for man other than woman. I think God already knew that. I don't think Adam necessarily knew that. So God sent animals to Adam. Then after he sent animals, he sent Eve. Genesis 2, verses 23 through 24 says, "The man said, 'This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man.' That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh." Man and woman were made for each other, and they found a best friend in each other. If we're kind of making comparisons, they were each other's best friend. Both Genesis 2 and 3 and those fictional stories, they all start in a perfect place. All start in a perfect place. Genesis 2 and 3, and really Genesis 1, 2, and 3, it's a really cool story because essentially what you have at the beginning, the earth is formless and void. There's nothing in the earth. It's just all empty. And then you have God who creates everything. But when he creates everything, it's all chaos. And slowly God creates order out of chaos. He creates light and dark. And then he splits them up between night and day. So he creates time. And then not only does he create time, he separates land from water. He creates plants. He creates birds and animals and fish and all this stuff. And he creates trees and foliage. And he creates humanity. He creates man. And that's on the sixth day he creates man. And then on the sixth day, and it's highlighted even more in Genesis 2, we read about how God created man. And then you see in Genesis 3 the fall of man. So you have this perfect place, which is the Garden of Eden, where humanity could walk with God and talk with God and have this intimate relationship with God. I mean, it was really, try to wrap your head around it. It's perfect. We had everything we need. It was perfect, literally. And so it had this perfect place. And then in Genesis 3, 1 through 7, we read about the fall of man. And at that point, this perfection was threatened or ruined. Genesis 3, 1 through 7 is pretty much, it's a conversation between the serpent and Eve. And the serpent deceives Eve into taking the fruit. He says, did God really say you couldn't eat any tree from the garden? And she says, no, just this specific tree. And the serpent tells her, if you eat this fruit, you'll be like God, and all this stuff. So essentially, she's deceived. She takes the fruit, and all of a sudden, boom, this perfection was ruined. And they realized they didn't have this perfection, and they didn't have this intimate relationship with God. If you look at Genesis 3, towards the end of it, you see the consequences of sin. And it says that men are going to have to work the ground and labor hard, like really do hard work just to get food. And women are going to have to have really painful, awful pregnancies and births. And there's even more than that. But then it also says that God casted them out of the garden, and he guarded the garden with like flaming swords, which is a really cool thing. I want to go and watch that on like the heavenly Netflix someday, whenever I get to heaven. But he guarded the Garden of Eden with like flaming swords. And so at this point, I mean, imagine being kicked out of heaven where you had everything you need, and all of a sudden you realize that, man, this world's a lot bigger than I thought it was. Really, what Genesis 3 is like is this. Imagine you as a kid, and you decide, I'm going to run away from home. And so you go into your room, you pack up all your belongings, you pack some clothes and maybe a few extra pairs of undies and all this stuff, and you grab one toy, because you got to grab one toy. And so you grab your favorite toy, and you go up to your mom and say, Mom, I'm leaving the house. I'm out of here. And so you walk to the front door, you open it, you got to reach up because there's the knob because you're little. So you got to open it, and you open this big door, and you walk out, and you get out to the end of the driveway, and you stop for a second, and you look around, and there are big cars coming by, and there are strangers who you don't know out in this world. And it's at that moment you realize, wait a second, this world's a lot bigger than I thought it was. It's a lot more dangerous than I thought it was. And it's the same thing for Christianity. It's the same thing with Genesis 3. You have man who had everything we needed. We were provided for. We were taken care of. And all of a sudden we think we can do it on our own. And it's not until we get to the end of the driveway that we realize, I can't handle this. Not only can I not handle this, but I need God. And we do need God. And it's at this point in Genesis 3 that humanity, just like Frodo Baggins and Luke Skywalker and Harry Potter, humanity realizes our purpose. It's not to have a comfortable life. Our purpose is to get close to God once more. We had that deep, intimate, close, connected relationship with God ripped away from us through sin. What our hearts long for is to get back into that deep relationship with Him once more. The interesting thing is, this is true not just for Christians, but for all of humanity, whether you realize it or not. Whether you realize it or not, whether you're Hindu or atheist or Christian or Buddhist or whatever it might be, Islam, whatever it is, humanity's purpose is to grow closer to God. Now, the sad thing is, I think most Christians miss this. Maybe not most, a lot of them. I think a lot of Christians miss this. You know, a lot of Christians, I know, just see Christianity as something they do amongst other things. It's no bigger than their friends or their family or their job or their school. Or it's just another thing that we do in the week, and that's pretty much what it's left to. And it's just not that big of a deal to them. It's like they know that God existed. They believe that Jesus Christ existed. They even believe that Jesus died on the cross. But do they understand their purpose? Do they understand that their purpose is not just to believe the right things and act like a Christian is supposed to act, but it's so much deeper than that. It goes into our being, our very core. It's to get back to that deep relationship with God again. And I'm not throwing stones. Let me be very clear. I'm not throwing stones at people. I'm not sitting here saying, you know, I'm better than you or I'm holier than thou. That's not what I'm doing, because you name a sin, and I've probably done it at some point in my life, and you name some sins, probably did them today. But when I see Christians who are so lackadaisical with what they believe in, what else can I believe other than that they just don't understand their purpose? You know, when I see Christians, excuse me, you know, when I see Christians who skip Bible class week after week after week just so they can catch the football game in the afternoon, or when I see Christians who haven't touched the Bible in so long that they have to like wipe the dust off of it before they read it, or when Christians who have been Christians for so long who don't even know how to pray really, or when I see Christians who unapologetically live in a way that's antithetical to the Bible, I have to believe that although they might believe that God existed and Jesus existed and even that he died on the cross for our sins, that they just don't understand their purpose. Because our purpose isn't just to believe that God existed. Even Satan believes that. Our purpose isn't our purpose isn't to believe that Jesus existed. Even atheists believe that. Our purpose is to follow him, to dance with him, to laugh with him, to live life with him, to walk with him, to obey him, to understand just how awesome he is, and let that information penetrate into our hearts and change us from the inside out. You know, one passage that I've really tried to nail down in the heads of my students, and really try to reiterate multiple times throughout my ministry, is James 2. And James 2 is really cool because it shows us that our faith is so much more than just what we believe. So much more than what we just believe. This is James 2:14. It says, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but doesn't have works? Can such faith save him? If a brother or sister is without clothes and lacks daily food, and one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, stay warm, and be well fed,' but you don't give them what the body needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith, if it doesn't have works, is dead by itself." I'm going to say it again. In the same way, faith, if it doesn't have works, is dead by itself. But someone will say, "You have faith, and I have works. Show me your faith without works, and I will show you faith by my works." You believe that God is one? Good. Even demons believe, and they shudder. Senseless person. Are you willing to learn that faith without deeds is useless? Wasn't Abraham our father justified by works in offering Isaac his son on the altar? You see that faith was active together with his works, and by works faith was made complete. And the scripture was fulfilled that says, "Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. He was called God's friend." You see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. In the same way, wasn't Rahab the prostitute also justified by works and receiving the messengers and sending them out by a different route? For just as the body without the spirit is dead, so also faith without works is dead. And so, like I said, I love that passage because it shows us that faith is so much more than just what we believe. It dives deeper and it changes us. When I taught this passage to my students, one thing that I taught them is faith equals belief plus works. Faith equals belief plus action, in other words. And that's such an interesting thing to think about, but it's true. Faith is more than just what we believe, and it delves into who we are and what we do on a day-to-day basis. So my question to you, I guess, is twofold. One, where is your faith? Where is your faith? This passage, James 2, is a call to self-examination. It's a call to look at yourself and say, where do I have faith? Do I even have faith? It's a call to self-examination. So where is your faith? And then the second question that I want you to think about this week is this. Do you know your purpose? Do you really know your purpose? Because it's more than just what we believe. It affects our actions. What good would it have done if Harry Potter just believed that he needed to destroy Voldemort? What good would it have done if Frodo knew, he believed that he was supposed to destroy this ring, but never actually made any effort to destroy it? Purpose affects our actions, and if we realize what our purpose is in Christ, our actions will show it. Now, the cool thing is, our purpose can't be fulfilled by us, because our purpose is to get back to God, but the thing that's blocking us from getting back to God is sin. So we don't really have an ability to get back because we can't deal with sin. We can't forgive sin. The awesome thing is that Jesus already did that on the cross for us. Jesus fulfilled our purpose for us. And it's only through faith in Him that we can get back to that Garden of Eden relationship that we crave for. That we crave whether we realize it or not. And that's this week's lesson. Or show, whatever you want to call it. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you benefited from it. I know I did. I always benefit from teaching more than I do from sitting and listening. So I enjoyed it. I benefited from it. With that said, next week we're going to look at Cain and Abel and look at some applications from that. So hope you tag along. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.